Hi guys, welcome to the Grammarly YouTube channel, and in this video I'll be giving a short introduction to Lagrangian mechanics, when it is used, why it is used, and we'll be going through some examples to get a better grip on how to solve such problems. So here we go. So at its heart, the Lagrange method is essentially converting a vector problem into a simple scalar problem. Say you have your traditional NLM problem where you'll have to be drawing some FBDs, taking net force, net torque, talk about different points, ICR. So many times it's easy to solve, but most of the times it gets tricky and challenging. This is where Lagrangian mechanics steps in, because instead of forces, here we analyze energies. So let's see how it's done. So you might be familiar with the Hamiltonian, which is essentially the total energy of the system. So T is the kinetic energy, V is the potential energy. The total energy would be the Hamiltonian. Similarly, the Lagrangian is defined as T minus V. So it is, you first write the total kinetic energy of the system and subtract the potential energy from it to get the Lagrangian. Now, what do we do with this Lagrangian operator? First, you'll be needing to select a variable p, say some variable p. Now, you'll have to partial differentiate this Lagrangian with respect to p dot, that is dp by dt. You'll have to partial differentiate the Lagrangian with respect to this, and then differentiate this again with respect to time. Now, what we do is we equate this to the partial derivative of Lagrangian with respect to p. Now we will, these equations might seem arbitrary. We'll see how we derive them, etc. But right now assume them to be true. I'll be giving a crude proof later on in this video, but there is a very beautiful proof by using the Noether's theorem. I'll get to that in the next video. So let us take a simple case of the Lagrangian, the normal traditional spring pendulum, the SHM problem. So say the extension at any time is x. So this is actually the extension from the natural length. So the potential energy stored would just become half kx square from Hooke's law, and the velocity would become x dot, as it is dx by dt. So the total energy would just become this, half mx dot square minus half kx square. Now you partial derivative it with respect to x dot, you get half into 2mx dot, which is nothing but mx dot. Now you differentiate this again with respect to time, you get mx double dot, which is this. Now you differentiate this with respect to x, you get dou L by dou x is nothing but minus half into 2 into kx, which is nothing but minus kx, which is the RHS. Now, as you probably noted, this is just MA, and this is the force, Hooke's law restoring force. So this is essentially the same as F equal to MA. So you might feel this is just a roundabout way of getting to the thing that we already know, but you'll understand why it's so powerful in the later examples. So let's now discuss a crude proof of why solving the Euler-Lagrange equations gives you the same result as F equal to MA. Say I have a 3D Cartesian system, x, y, z. The velocity in x direction would just be dx by dt, nothing but x dot. Velocity in y direction would nothing be just y dot, and velocity in z direction would nothing be but just z dot. The kinetic energy would be half m vx square plus vy square plus vz square, given here. Say the potential energy of the system is nothing but say it's defined by a function v of x comma y comma z. That would give us the Lagrangian. If we differentiate this with respect to x dot, you just get mx dot. Now you differentiate this with respect to time again, you get mx double dot. Now that would be the RHS, mx double dot, and the LHS would be nothing but dou by dou x of minus dou by dou x of v comma x comma y comma z. That is what is written here. And if you recall from the definition of potential energy, you will recall that force is nothing but minus del u by del x, where u is nothing but x comma y comma z. So that means this is nothing but f of x. So this is nothing but just saying max is fx, may is fy, maz is fz, which is kind of obvious from Newton's laws. But so this illustrates the point that there is nothing new in the Lagrangian technique. It's essentially the same as F equal to ma. So we are not doing anything new. So let's discuss another example. This is also a very classic example. Say you have a wedge of mass m and you release a block of mass small m on it. All this surface, all the surfaces are frictionless. We'll have to calculate the horizontal acceleration of the wedge as soon as it is released. So one way of solving would just be writing the normal forces and then taking component along x direction, writing constraint equations. So that's what let's discuss the F equal to ma method first. So there is a normal force N acting on small m, and it has a say it has a horizontal acceleration ax and a vertical acceleration ay. So the horizontal force, the vertical forces are mg minus n cos theta, which is nothing but may, and then the horizontal forces are n sin theta, which is nothing but max. Also the same horizontal force acts on capital M, so n sin theta is also m capital Ax. So we've got three equations, but we have four variables. So how do we solve this? We also have to take into account that this block has to remain in contact with this. So we could write a constraint equation, or what I am doing here is I am looking at the block from the frame of the wedge. So it will have an acceleration ax plus a capital X and then a vertical acceleration a small y. Since it must remain in contact, ax plus a capital X and ay, so since it must remain in contact, so how do we solve this? We could write a constraint relation, but what I would like to do is let me look at this block from the frame of the wedge. It has a horizontal acceleration a small x plus a capital X and a vertical acceleration ay. Since it must remain in contact, the x of m with respect to capital M must just be half into a small x plus capital X, because remember, with respect to the wedge, that is its horizontal acceleration. And then the displacement in y direction is nothing but half ay square, because the acceleration in the vertical direction will not change. Now, since it must remain in contact, ym with respect to capital M by xm with respect to capital M must still be tan theta. So that's what we get here. Now tan theta is nothing but g minus n by m cos theta by n by m sin theta plus n by capital M sin theta. Now you solve this, you get n, and then from that you just get the acceleration of wedge. So from the first look, it looks easy, but as you can see, thinking from the frame of the block, it is a bit inconvenient. So let us see how we solve the same problem using Lagrangian mechanics. So say sorry for the bad handwriting. So say this block moves x1 in the y direction, this moves x2 in the z direction. With respect to the wedge, this goes x1 plus x2, and the y vertical direction, the distance it falls is nothing but x1 plus x2 tan theta, as y by x must remain tan theta. The Lagrangian is nothing but half mx dot square and plus half m x2 dot square and x1 dot plus x2 dot tan theta. That would be the velocity in y direction, which is what I have written here, x2 dot square plus x1 dot plus x2 dot whole square and tan square theta. As theta is constant, we can do this. Plus, of course, there's a potential energy which is negative here, so that is nothing but just, of course, the potential energy decreases here. Potential energy of this block decreases from mg to mg minus y. So the change would be my, which is nothing but m of x1 plus x2 tan theta. Sorry, mg x1 plus x2 tan theta. That is the potential energy minus of the change in potential energy. So that would be the Lagrange. Now say my first variable I selected is x1, we get this. Say the second variable I selected is x2, we get this. So solving these two equations is pretty straightforward. Just equate them, you would get the answer. So let's see another example where Lagrangian is very helpful. This is a recent problem of the day. It goes like this. So there are four identical smooth balls, each with mass m, radius r. They are placed so that it forms a pyramid. As shown in the figure, the system is released from the state of rest with the top ball moving down and the bottom balls moving radially outward. So this is going like this and these are going outward. Sorry, outward like this because it's symmetric. Now, so essentially it's in a pyramidal shape. It's hard to show on a 2D page. So this is essentially what the figure is now. So he's asking d square theta by dt square. Since it's symmetrical, theta is same for all three. So as you can note from our previous examples, you get in the LHS you always get it in a double dot term. So this is, since it's essentially theta double dot, you can already see some sort of a Lagrange forming. So first, to drive home the fact, let's solve this by Newton's laws. So first of all, the distance of the top ball is nothing but 2r sine theta plus r. That would be z, and then the radial distance of the bottom balls would be nothing but just 2r cos theta, in fact 2r cos theta. So it would be 2r cos theta, and that's it. So you differentiate dz by dt, you get 2r cos theta d theta by dt. This will be 0. There's nothing but 2r omega cos theta. Okay, now you differentiate dr by dt, you will get minus 2r sine theta and d theta by dt, which is nothing but just minus 2r omega sine theta. Now what would be the acceleration in z direction? We differentiate this again with respect to time. You get 2r cos theta d omega by dt minus 2r omega sine theta d theta by dt, which is nothing but just 2r d omega by dt is nothing but alpha. So you just get 2r alpha cos theta minus 2r omega square sine theta. And in the radial direction, it is nothing but you differentiate this again. You get minus 2r sine theta d omega by dt minus 2r omega cos theta d theta by dt. So it's basically using UV rule, u dv by dt plus v du by dt. This is nothing but just d omega by dt is again just alpha. So minus 2r alpha sine theta minus 2r omega square cos theta. That would be the radial acceleration. This would be the vertical acceleration of the top ball. This would be of the bottom balls. Now let's write let's draw the FBDs for each ball. So first of all, the top ball, there's a normal force perpendicular acting towards the center. That would be at an angle theta, and there's of course mg. So in the vertical direction is nothing but just mg minus 3n sine theta, because remember there are three normal forces acting, one from each ball. So 3n sine theta minus mg is nothing but m into 2r alpha cos theta minus 2r omega square sine theta. So now we get the normal force to be mg plus m 2r alpha cos theta minus 2r omega square sine theta whole divided by 3 sine theta. This would be equation number 1. Now we write the FBD on the bottom balls. The radial force is nothing but just n cos theta. That's it. There's no other radial force. Mg is in the vertical direction. Normal force from ground is also in the vertical direction. So n cos theta is nothing but ma in the radial direction, which is nothing but minus m 2r alpha sine theta plus 2r omega square cos theta. Equation 1. Equation 2. Solving both, putting n in this, we would get alpha is nothing but minus of 4r omega square sine theta cos theta plus g cos theta by 2r into 1 plus 2 sine square theta. So all in all, it is not such a difficult problem to solve by NLM, but as you can see, it's a little tricky, but it's still not that hard. But as you can see, the Lagrangian technique, it's much more simpler. Say we take the center of the bottom ball as the reference for our gravitational potential energy. we straight up can just write the kinetic energy to be half mvz square, which is the top ball's kinetic energy, and then plus half into 3m into vr square, which are the three bottom balls kinetic energy combined. So that would be the total kinetic energy, and then subtract that, as we have taken the bottom ball as a reference. Above it would be at a distance 2 mgr sine theta. This would be the potential energy. Okay, so since we have to subtract it, we get minus 2 mgr sine theta. Now vz is nothing but 2r cos theta theta dot, and vr is nothing but minus 2r sine theta theta dot, and you get this Lagrangian once you substitute the values. As you can see, the variable selection is no brainer. We'll have to select theta, as we want theta double dot. It would be very easy if we just select theta as our variable. Now taking theta as a variable, partial differentiate this with respect to theta dot, you just get 2r square 1 plus 2 sine square theta into 2 theta dot, and again differentiate this again, you get 2 theta double dot, which gives you this. Now you differentiate this with respect. So once you differentiate that with respect to this, you get this. So when you differentiate it again, you get this, and then you equate that to this, you get theta double dot is minus 4. As you can see, the Lagrangian is much more straightforward here. So say you differentiate that with respect to theta dot, you just get 4m r square theta dot 4m r square theta double dot. So say you differentiate this with respect to theta dot, what do you get? 4m r square theta dot into 1 plus 2 sine square theta. That would be that, and then you differentiate this again using d by uv rule. We get this. Equate that to the RHS, which is also easily calculatable, and then you just keep theta dot on the LHS, send all of this to the RHS, and you get theta double dot is minus 4r omega square sine theta cos theta plus g sine theta by 2r into 1 plus 2 sine square. Okay, this was the error. This is g cos theta actually. So the previous examples illustrated how to use the Lagrange. There were some basic examples. Now this example that I'm gonna be taking focuses on selection of variables. So if you select a wrong variable, it will become a little harder to solve, and you might even get a wrong answer. So let's see what the problem is all about. So we have to find the frequency of small oscillations of a loop of a hoop that is suspended by 3 strings, such that the plane of the loop, so it's always horizontal. So now the loop, since it's constrained by three strings and the center of mass moves only vertically, the hoop must rotate about a vertical axis passing through this center of mass. Say the height of the center of mass above the equilibrium position is some y, and then angle of rotation of the hoop is theta about the axis through the center of mass. So as you can see, there is only 1 degree of freedom. So let's write the total kinetic energy. First, this is the translation kinetic energy, which is nothing but half mv square, and this is the rotational kinetic energy, which is half I omega square. I is mr square theta dot square, and the potential is nothing but mgy. I am taking the reference to be the equilibrium position. So say the hoop it rotates by small angle theta. The point of attachment of the hoop and they move r theta horizontally. So say theta r, this length will become r theta. So they all will move r theta horizontally, but also the center of mass will move y up. So the point of attachment of hoop and string will also move y vertically. So there's a right angle triangle H R theta and L. H R theta and L, so that is the vertical direction. This would be the length L, H would be the height, R theta, that would be the amount it moved horizontally. So L square would be nothing but R square theta square plus H square, that is nothing but this. And then from this, using the binomial approximation, we get H is approximately L minus R square theta square by 2. Assuming theta is so small that we can neglect the higher order terms. So this rises by distance L minus h. So the distance would just be L minus h is nothing but just r square theta square by 2L. Since we are dealing with small oscillations, like it would be better if we choose theta as a variable instead of y. It might be tempting to choose y, but we should not choose y. Let's still be illustrated. The amplitude of variation of theta is small. It is much more helpful for us to select theta as a Lagrangian variable more than y. We'll select both as a variable and see why selecting theta is better. So from taking where is 1 and 2, so from this and this we get the total energy is nothing but half m r power 4 theta dot square plus half m r square theta dot square, which is approximately equal to half m r square theta dot square, as the theta square is negligibly small compared to theta dot square. So we are neglecting this term. So the total energy is nothing but just half m r square theta dot square, and the potential energy is just mg r square theta square by 2L. As you can see, it's just mg y, and y is nothing but r square theta square by 2L. Now we differentiate 2. We get y dot is nothing but r square into 2 theta by 2L into d theta by dt, which is nothing but r square theta dot by L. So from this we get the Lagrange half m r square theta dot square minus g by L theta square. Now we apply the Euler Lagrange d by dt dou L by dou theta dot equal to dou L by dou theta. We get this. We just get theta double dot equal to minus g by L theta, giving omega is nothing but root g by L, same as a simple pendulum. That is the interesting part. It is the same as a simple pendulum. So if I selected theta as a variable, this went by very smoothly. The final differential equation also was a standard SHM differential equation, so it was pretty easy to solve. But what if instead of theta I selected y as my variable? Let's see what happens. Now using 2 and 4, we can write the Lagrange as, we can write the total energy as half m y dot square into 1 plus L by 2y. And since the theta is small, we can kind of assume that this is approximately small. So we can say, we can neglect L by 2y. So we get half m L square y dot square by 2y as the total kinetic energy. Here itself there's an inherent contradiction, because at the equilibrium position when y equal to 0, this is straight up undefined. That should give us a big red flag. But still, let's continue. Let's try to solve this equation. What do we get? Let's write the potential energy. T minus v is nothing but mgy. We just get half m ly square minus 2gy. And we now writing the Lagrange, we get y double dot square minus y dot square by 2y equal to minus 2g by y, minus 2g by L into y. Say in a hurry you neglect this, saying y dot square, it will be small. But you cannot do that, because this is actually first order term. Y dot square by 2y is actually first order term. So you cannot neglect that. And in case you actually neglected that, you would get y double dot is minus 2g by Ly, and which would give you omega as root 2g by L, which is in fact the wrong answer. So you have to be very careful while solving this. Now, solving this differential equation isn't as trivial as this, because this is a standard SHM differential equation, but this is a much harder differential equation. So I'll be doing solution by substitution. Since y is always greater than or equal to 0, I'm guessing a solution of the form y naught cos square omega t. And now I differentiate this. I get y dot is minus 2 omega y naught sin omega t cos omega t, and y double dot you get minus 2 omega square y naught cos square omega t minus sin square omega t. So I am essentially trying to find out y naught and omega. I am assuming the solution to be of a form like this. So this is not a proper method of solving the differential equation. I am guessing a solution. So I will not be delving into the calculation. You just substitute all these three back into this, and we'll get omega as correct, which is nothing but root g by l. As I mentioned before, this demonstrates the importance of selecting the variable. If you don't select the correct variable, you'll be stuck at this differential equation, and in case you don't know what to do, screwed. So you'll have to select a proper variable. That, I guess, only comes with experience. So I would suggest to do more problems of this type. Yeah, so if the correct variables are selected and only conservative forces are involved, then the Lagrangian technique is extremely helpful. And many times, especially in some oscillation problems, SHM, this is the method compared to traditional F equal to ma. Like, try solving your next SHM problem with the Lagrangian, provided all the conditions accept. You'll feel Lagrangian is a good method. So as it comes to oscillations, so here's a Lagrange practice problem from this year's online physics Olympiad. So there's a uniform rod of mass m and length l, and it is connected to a string of length 2l, negligible mass, and it is suspended from a string at equilibrium. It is slightly nudged at a point on its body, so it can either be given a small impulse or a small torque. Now he's asking the largest stable frequency of oscillation. So try doing this by Lagrange. Also do this by NLM. The NLM method is, in fact, the way I did it, it was very tricky, but it was easy only. But it was very tricky. Lagrange is a bit lengthy in this compared to what we have done before, but still, it would be a much more straightforward method. So this is a practice problem for today. I'll be making another video on this, going into a more detailed, some harder problems, and the proof of Lagrangian mechanics. Till then, stay tuned. Thank you for watching.